I'd like to reconvene the District 300 Board of Education meeting in our open session. I'd like to welcome staff, and for the record, we are doing this meeting again virtually. With that, I would like to ask Mr. Hyde to introduce our special guest from Newbert for the pledge.
So this evening for the Pledge of Allegiance, we have Nicholas Meyer and Samantha, I have to move your screens, Schulater. And they have these pledge, should be opening up here momentarily.
Good afternoon, Board of Education and Mr.
You'll please
Hyde.
rise for the pledge.
Thank you for inviting Newbert Elementary School to lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance this afternoon. Today, I invited two fifth graders to help us with the Pledge of Allegiance while practicing safe social distancing. Today we have Nick Meyer and Sam Schluter. Nick and Sam were our IPA recipients for the 2020 school year. We were not able to formally recognize Nick and Sam, so today they will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it
which
stands,
stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for all your leadership.
Thank you.
Elementary school. Wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Thank you, Mr. Hyde and the Board of Education for allowing Newbert to participate in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Newbert.
Yes, so at this time, board members, I have the unfortunate responsibility of sharing some untimely news. We were informed that Carol Hager has passed away. She passed away on May 6, 2020. She was a District 300 employee from 1996 to 2007. She was a kindergarten teacher at Hampshire Elementary School from 1996 to 1997. And then from 1997 to 2007, she was a first grade teacher in the same building. Following her 11 years of service to District 300, Mrs. Hager retired on June 6th, 2007. If you'll please join me for a moment of silence. And obviously our thoughts and prayers are with her and her family, or with her, excuse me, with her relatives and her family at this time.
Thank you. Item number 6, approval of the agenda. I need a motion, a second to approve the agenda for tonight.
Steve, did you want to do a roll call first to see, to start it? As far as who's here and who's not here?
Yes, for open session roll call. That's
Yes.
fine.
Yes. Fiorentino,
Present.
Lamarca,
Present.
McNicholas,
Present.
Miller, Scarpino present, Stevens, Zettler, Mr. Hyde, did she give a thumbs up?
I am looking now, sir. I apologize. She is giving a thumbs up.
Okay. 5 board members are here. You have a quorum.
Thank you.
Okay.
So now I would like to entertain a motion and a second to approve the agenda for tonight.
I motion.
Second.
Lamarca,
Yes.
Fiorentino,
Aye.
Scarpino, aye. Zettler,
She's an aye.
thank you. McNicholas,
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Terrific, thank you. So for good news, if we could do it this order, if Leslie would read number 1 and Dr. Scarpino number 2, and I can read number 3, Mary McNicholas number 4, if that's okay with everybody.
I gotta find my.
Okay. All right, the D300 Foundation announces Educator and Employee of the Year nominees. The D300 Foundation for Educational Excellence has announced their Educator and Employee of the Year nominees for 2020. By honoring the D300 educator and employee who best meets the award criteria, it is the D300 Foundation's hope that the excellence that exists in our schools will continue to advance. Congratulations to all of this year's nominees, including from Algonquin Lakes, Christina Dahlberg and Laura Mulan; from DeLacy Family Education Center, Megan Tracy and Melissa DeSilvio; from Dundee Highlands, Sonia Rupnick and Ethel Shilmower; from Eastview, Jeanne Gruder and Celeste Zizokis; from Gilbert's, Lauren Sarnwick and Marilyn Correa; from Gulfview, Maria Ramirez and Rebecca Hendrickson; from Hampshire Elementary, Andrew Rakowski and Karen Hayes; from Lake in the Hills, Lisa Levy and Keith Gutierrez; from Lakewood, Shelby Zane and Roman Hernandez; from Liberty, Julie Gard and Donna Eberly; from Lincoln Prairie, Jamie Graver and Jennifer Salmieri; from Meadowdale, Lisa Feltman and Laura Hernandez; from Newbert, Kelly Seklecki and Christine Stofan; from Parkview, Lisa Good and Sarah Guth; from Perry, Janelle Anderson and Roseanne Bonoy; from Sleepy Hollow, Diane Herman and Beth Wolf; from Westfield, Angela Springborn and Megan Vincent; from Wright, Alyssa Fewell and Tracy Radson; from Algonquin Middle School, Jennifer DeLong and Colleen Burra; from Carpentersville Middle School, Katie Odenthal and Jebez Etienne; from Dundee Middle School, Ryan Emmon and Bridget McKagan; from Hampshire Middle School, Kelly Crone and Rose Rodriguez; from Oak Ridge School, Jessica Hood Longo and Christy Hopkins; from Dundee Crown High School, Todd White and Christy Hopkins; from Hampshire High School, Kate Sheehan and Kevin Fassone; from Jacobs High School, Emma Plaxkowski and Dave Matashid; and from the D300 Central Office, Casey DeFaw in the Communications Department. Congratulations to all this year's nominees, and I apologize if I completely slaughtered your names.
Very good.
This spring, District 300 held an annual contest to design board president Ann Miller's shoes for high school graduation. The shoe design submissions were voted on by a District 300 Central Office Committee. District 300 would like to thank all the students who submitted a shoe design. We are very proud to have so many talented young designers and artists in our schools. At this time, District 300 is excited to announce the winners of the 2020 Graduation Shoe Design Contest. Caitlin Schmeisser from Dundee Crown High School, Paloma Hamilton from Hampshire High School, and Haley Fetting from Jacobs High School. Congratulations to all.
That's excellent. Okay, and the Stella Wetzel Memorial Scholarship, the LEAD 300 Memorial Scholarship, was founded by former Superintendent Dr. Norm Wetzel in the preservation of his wife's legacy as a teacher in District 300. The annual accolade supports graduating seniors pursuing careers in the field of education, and LEAD is excited to announce an unprecedented number of 8 winning recipients. 16 seniors applied for the 8 available $1,000 scholarships and were critiqued on participation in academic and extracurricular activities, leadership positions held within school and in the community, volunteer responsibilities, and academic honors. Applicants were also required to complete written statements that cited an inspirational educator, as well as an outline of future educational and professional goals. Congratulations to the following Stella Wetzel Memorial Scholarship winners. From Dundee Crown High School, Kaylee Gertz, who will pursue a degree in school speech pathology. From Hampshire High School, Elizabeth Diarpa, who will pursue a special education degree. Sydney White, who will pursue a school speech pathology degree. And Morgan Miller, who will pursue elementary education. At Jacobs High School, Shakaya Watkins Hayes, who will pursue culinary arts and family and consumer science education. Tommy Devona, who will pursue a degree in music education, and Rosalind Leitner, who will pursue a degree in special education, as well as Melody Boberg, who will pursue elementary education. Congratulations to all the winners of the Stella Wetzel Memorial Scholarship.
And at this time, Mr. Fiorentino, as discussed, I have unmuted Lead 300 President, Mr. Michael Williamson. He had a few comments since this stems from the Lead group and the Wetzel's donation. Mr. Williamson, are you able to join us?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you, Superintendent Hyde and D300 Board of Education. LEAD was able to give an unprecedented amount of scholarships this year, and I was just going to read the bios of the winners. Thank you, Mr. Fiorentino, for giving the names. And so I'll do that if that's okay.
Yes.
Dundee Crown Charger graduate Kaylee Gertz aspires to be a school psychologist, or a school speech pathologist. I read that incorrectly. Kaylee enjoys working one-on-one with students and watching their personal growth impact them to succeed in both their education and life. D300 educators Whitford Kuhn, Sleepy Hollow Elementary, and Stephanie Hassapis, Dundee Crown High School, have been named Kaylee's most influential teachers because of how they were able to instill a confidence in her that she hopes to foster in her future students. Kaylee will take the skills developed in her internship at Sleepy Hollow Elementary on to her next chapter as an Illinois State University Redbird. Elizabeth DeArpa is one of 3 Hampshire High School scholarship recipients and comes from a wealth of involvement in the field of special education. Through her volunteer commitments with Gigi's Playhouse, Team Tastic, Tri-City Challengers, Little League, and Gary D. Wright's 2nd grade special education internship, Elizabeth loves aiding in the process of growth and seeing others achieve new goals that may have previously seemed unobtainable. She acknowledges Mr. Godeke and his out-of-the-box teaching style as inspirational and hopes that through her enrollment as a St. Xavier University Musketeer, she can replicate this ability to better students' characters both in and out of the classroom. Graduated Whipper Morgan Miller will begin her pursuit of an elementary education degree with a minor in sociology, first as an ECC Spartan and then as an Illinois State University Redbird. A theater talent with extensive involvement in school and community activities and performances, Morgan's wish is to create a safe, healthy learning environment for future students in which no one is afraid to raise their hand or make a mistake. Morgan accredits John Seeker, Hampshire High School, as her most influential educator and hopes to challenge my students to grow while supporting them, just as Mr. Seeker did, modeled for her. Hampshire High School dual enrollment graduate Sydney White will take her collegiate experience on to the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign this fall as she begins her studies in speech pathology as a Fighting Illini. Sydney believes that speech and language is a huge part of our lives, and knowing that I will be able to make an impact in students' lives is what pushes me to do my best. Sydney would like to recognize her mother, an audiologist, for inspiring her to work in the field of education, and hopes that becoming a speech pathologist will allow her to follow her mother's footsteps and help to educate both children and adults. Thomas Devona is one of 4 Jacobs Golden Eagle graduates to receive the scholarship this year. And this past week, he was recognized as his school's virtual senior awards night as the winner of the 2020 HDJ Music Department Award. Tommy desires to become a music educator and share with young minds how powerful music can be in conveying emotion, telling a story, and bringing people together. Mrs. Jennifer Parker, Director of Choral Activities at JHS, is whom Tommy believes has been most impactful to him, and cites her practice of empowering students through their own autonomy as a trait he has come to appreciate most. Tommy will begin his studies at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater this fall, transitioning from a Golden Eagle to a Warhawk. Shakea Watkins-Hayes was also recognized for her talents at Senior Awards, as she was the recipient of the HDJ 2020 Culinary Arts Award. Kea also won the first ever District 300 Chopped Challenge this past semester, so it is understandable that she wishes to pursue her secondary education studies in the focus area of culinary arts, family, and consumer sciences. Fueled by personal experience, Kea's aspiration is to make a difference where hope is scarce, to show how to show low-income teenagers that they can be successful even when society tells them it's impossible. Appreciative of many staff members at Jacobs High School, Kea listed Jennifer Christian, Jenna Moeller, Daniela Dyra, Robert Sarabona, Molly Fisher, Rebecca Alacantar, Megan Placco, and Jeffrey Davis, all as important educators in her life. She will become a colonel this fall at Eastern Kentucky University. Jacobs Golden Eagle graduate Rosalind Leitner is incredibly anxious to begin her journey toward becoming a special education teacher this August at as a Valparaiso University Crusader, student athlete. Rosalind hopes that she can make a positive impact on my future special education students, just like my Special Olympics teams have done for me. I have seen what a teacher can bring to a person's life, and I am ready to do that for all of my future students. Rosalind gives a nod to her involvement with HDJ Special Olympians and the long line of educators in her life, particularly her mother, Cheryl Leitner, as influencing her chosen educational path. Our final Jacobs recipient, Melanie Boberg, is thankful for her experience with Big Brothers Big Sisters in her Lincoln Prairie Elementary School internship, knowing they have propelled her pursuit of elementary education degree and ESL endorsement. Melanie aims to provide a learning environment in which her students can flourish and exceed their goals, and is confident that Illinois State University will give her the tools to accomplish this aspiration. Kristen Kiefer of Lincoln Prairie has left a lasting impression on Melanie since her days as a first grade student in her classroom, and hopes to mirror how Mrs. Kiefer always made sure that each child was on the right path and had every tool at their disposal to do their best. Thank you for letting us recognize these students in this forum. Lead 300 truly appreciates the opportunity, and we also appreciate the opportunity to give back to education by funding those in the small way that we can who pursue that education. And hopefully Mrs. Nackey will begin her recruitment of the speech pathologists and special ed teachers we mentioned here already. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson and Lead 300. And with that, we'll move to the superintendent's report. Mr. Hyde.
There is one more good news item. I'm not sure who picked up this one. District 300 student appreciation video.
I can do it.
Excellent.
All right. To commemorate the final day of the academic year, District 300 posted a musical student appreciation video titled "There's a Place Where You Belong," which set out to remind students that even though they might be learning from home, they remain an essential part of our D300 family. The video is District 300's fastest video to reach 10,000 views on social media. District 300 would like to thank those who worked on the project, including the Communication Department's Casey DeFaw, Shannon Caputo, and Tracy Magsman, and District 300's amazing music teachers, including Hampshire High School's Chris Cherry, who provided his vocal and guitar talents through the video.
And it was outstanding.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. McNicholas. Superintendent's report, Mr. Hyde.
Yes, sir. So I want to piggyback real quick off of what Ms. McNichols just shared. So that video, tell you what a great way to end an otherwise crazy end to a school year. Very emotional watching that. I tell you, I can pretty much gauge the power in any of our videos that, Mr. McGinn and his team produce based off how much my mom cries. And every time she watches the video, she cries. So we posted it and reposted it, tweeted it, and it's just really been embraced by the entire community. And we want to continue to thank our teachers who went above and beyond in so many countless efforts on their behalf to keep our students engaged, to make them feel missed and valued, to provide encouragement, everything from home visits. We actually had a teacher go so far as to have an author's chair in their hallway at their apartment complex. We had people paying special visits to homes, dropping off gifts. Obviously, all of our high schools provided senior signs. We provided at the district level the 5th and 8th grade promotion signs as they transition to their next phase in education. But I tell you, the commitment on behalf of our staff is just incredible. I actually happened to be on the phone with Miss Katie Wachowski-Wetzel, principal from Dundee Crown, who answered her cell phone while she was in the car with Steve Gertz, because they actually took a table with the curtain and everything with them as they were visiting students' homes to allow them to have a formal signing day. So as they visited each home, they set up the table, set up all of the background, took pictures, and then posted to social media. And I'll tell you, that speaks to the level of commitment, caring, and compassion that our staff have for all of our students in our community. So, and I also want to thank our parents, transitioning to e-learning and having to juggle that in the midst of many of them having to be full-time employees, working from home simultaneously was not easy. A lot of frustrations initially, and we are listening. Surveys will go out to our community and our staff this week or next week, so we can gather additional feedback to make sure that we continue to refine our practice. We were very fortunate to have piloted it last year, more fortunate this year to have a really good sense and be able to collect some really meaningful data. But there are problems to resolve. There's technology issues for staff. There's the issue for families. In particular, one of the concerns we heard expressed most wasn't necessarily quality of assignments or the connectivity to students, but it was for those families in particular at elementary age students who have multiple children. Families really struggle with, I have to work, and simultaneously I'm trying to manage 3 or 4 learners in my own household. So we have to definitely work to explore some options to make sure that we're recording lessons so that those families can actually try to spread that instructional time throughout the day when it's more convenient and conducive to their schedules. It may mean that students may not necessarily always be connected in the classroom in real time, but recording and other opportunities are things that we'll discuss. We'll put together a committee once the data comes in as we continue to refine our planning. On the front end of the superintendent's report, I think it's also important to note for both staff and for our community members and stakeholders, please don't think that we had not actively been planning for every possible scenario for the school reopening in August. We have actively been planning and working through the countless logistical issues that we may face in August. Everything, we're trying to work through scenarios from everything from there's no restrictions and schools can reopen and providing some options for families who may have concerns, all the way to we're reopening in an e-learning, remote learning environment. So a lot to discuss. It's important that we get survey feedback. So parents will be hearing this regularly. As in addition, they'll be hearing more about registration to make sure we're getting all of our students registered for the upcoming year. But we really want to hear the feedback from families so that as we plan and we're working to address the issues or concerns that they may have had. Again, this is not a survey to talk or that we were collecting feedback on individual teacher practice. It really is a survey to help inform our overall practice of ensuring that our haiku page and our PowerSchool implementation best address the needs of our learners. Board members, you've been privy to conversations about that. But I will be presenting this at the next meeting in June officially. But again, in the interim, we will be releasing surveys for parents and for our teaching staff and paraeducators and others who participated daily, so that we can make sure we're addressing or trying to resolve any issues that they may have faced, either between communication or the interface or other things. So excited to be able to share that. My instincts, as I've shared with the board, I do believe that we'll move to phase 3. We're going to talk about that as part of my presentation, but we're going to start with the financial review. So I'll save a few more of my comments until my section of the superintendent's report. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Harkin, who's going to provide us with the budget overview.
Sure. Thank you, Superintendent Hyde, Board of Education. It's that time of year where we start preparing and fine tuning for our final budget adoption, which will take place in September. So Mr. Hyde, if you want to push to the next slide.
Yes, ma'am.
So tonight's presentation will review the 2019-20 projected operating funds budget, and then we'll provide an update on the year-end projections. After that, we'll go through an analysis of our operating fund baseline budget, explaining our expense assumptions and scenarios, and reviewing a quick recovery, a medium recovery, and a slow recovery, along with our budget requests that we'll be asking you to vote on later on today. Also, we'll do a quick review of the FY 2020 capital projects budget. And again, we'll be looking for approval of authorization to begin design work on those projects. Again, that isn't the formal approval for any projects themselves. Those bids will go out in late fall. So as we look at what's happening in the financial recovery and what's happening with the impact of COVID, we will update the CFOC and board finance as we progress, but we need to make sure that we're beginning our design work now, so that if we are in position to bid any projects that we'll ask for approval, that we'll be able to get our bids out like we have previously, which will allow us to get the most favorable pricing for our projects. So the next slide shows just where we ended up with what our budget was for FY 19-20. Roughly for our operating, we were looking at $282 million in total revenue. Our primary source of revenue being property taxes at 65%, state evidence-based funding at 18.6%, and other state funding at 4.4%, federal funding at 6.8%, local at 4%, and 1.3% that we get from the Economic Development Act. In the next slide, you can see where our expenses lie out. In total, we're looking at $278 million in what we projected in our total expenditures. That would have represented revenues exceeding expenditures of $2.5 million. Our biggest source of expenditures are salaries, insurance, and benefits. Our next biggest is purchase services for things such as transportation, our charter school payment. Our next biggest expenditure is our outplaced tuition and our debt service payments. And then we have capital outlay. Charter school payment actually is separate and broken out by 2.9%, and our supplies at 4.4%. On the next slide, here's where we believe we will end the year. For our revenues, we believe we'll be under budget or less than what we projected at about $7 million. Property taxes are higher than what was expected because of new property that was larger than what we had originally estimated. We are expecting our local revenue to be down in food service and student fees. Food service is offset through our lower food service costs, but certainly the student fee revenue is lower than what we projected. Our EBF should be flat. We expect to receive all the money that we budgeted in that line item. And our state and other revenue is actually higher due to collections for our transportation revenue claim and higher funding that we received in our ALOT program. Federal grants we're expecting to be lower at $3.5 million. However, in that scenario, we also will have offsetting lower expenditures that will not be paid, and the funds associated with the lower federal revenue will be offset by future, will we be able to use that next year. On our other sources, so that's the biggest portion of being, we projected to be at 4.4, but that was a delay in our device refresh. We were planning on purchasing our devices this spring, and the plan was to borrow our lease for us to pay for that piece. So while it's $4.4 million lower, we actually will, that's lower, but also our capital outlays lower in our expenditures. So really, when you net that out, we're expecting our overall revenues to be under budget about 2.5 million. And the biggest portion of that is in federal revenue, which will roll over to next year. So, and as we look at our expenditures on the next slide, salary, we expect to be lower at about 2.4 million due to COVID-19 and some of the budgeted line items because of the end of the year not having a quarter of the year where we had people in positions or had unfilled positions. For insurance, we have lower costs than anticipated due to COVID-19 because a lot of people have not been able to get in to get elective surgeries, as well as we actually have trended really well in our insurance. And we believe a good portion of that is we've got a very active insurance committee, as well as a comprehensive wellness program that we rolled out last year. And we've seen where our insurance costs have trended at 5% and 7% in previous years that we're going to be flat and under our current insurance premiums for next year. So that's much of that's due to the great work we have going on with just being actively watching our insurance and insurance expenditures. Benefits will be down just because if salaries are down, that's correlated to paying FICA and Medicare and some of those other percentages of benefit costs that are associated with salaries. So we would expect that to be lower. Purchase services, we expect to be lower due to not being open for the last 3 months. And so there were certain things that we had planned that are not occurring. Supplies will be lower again because we did not expect to be down for 3 months and we had budgeted supply costs that we expected to be there, as well as that does contain some of our utility costs, which are lower due to not having our buildings running at full capacity. We talked about capital outlay, where we see the reduction in because of not purchasing our one-to-one devices. We see capital outlay down about 4.3 million. So that actually would have been over budget about 100,000 due to some just shifting of items within the budget for various expenditures and outlays. Charter school is over budget at 165,000, and that's primarily related to a higher tuition per capita cost. They have actually lower enrollment than we expected, but there are per capita tuition was higher, which created a larger payment being made to the charter school, and other uses is flat. So overall, we would expect to be $17 million higher. So we're under budget in expenses about $17 million, mainly due to not spending due to COVID-19. So when we combine both of those and update our year-end projections, our revenues, we expected to be about 275 million, expenditures at 261 million, with a net change in fund balance of just short of 14 million. We will have a fund balance transfer to the capital projects budget to help pay for our capital projects that we've got planned. So we'd expect to have an ending fund balance of about $115 million, or roughly 44% of our fund balance percentage. Just to remind everyone, our target is 30%. Our board policy is we need to be at 25%. So we're well within this threshold of the board fund balance policy. So now we are at the point of time where we update our budget assumptions for the next coming year. We've done it because of COVID-19, 3 different scenarios: a quick recovery, a medium recovery, and a slow recovery. We'll provide slides that provide an analysis of what are those differences. And all of our expenses are constant in all scenarios. Nothing's changed at this point. So to look at our first slide for expenditures, salaries are per our negotiated agreements. While we have a flat insurance for this year, we have factored in that if we had a flat and we're working off of last year's estimate, we're expecting a 5% increase in health insurance. We're expecting a 5% tuition and charter school increase. We're expecting a transportation increase of 5%, sanitation and water sewer up 2%, and general liability, we actually have the bills, and that's up 7.4%, or roughly $165,000. That's not a big line item in our budget, and we've seen that be flat for many years. So just due to the tight insurance market out there, we're expecting that to be a larger than 5% in our greatest increase on a percentage basis, but overall, it's not a significant percentage of the whole entire budget. So as we look at operating fund quick recovery projections, we would expect, we know what next year's CPI is, but it's the following year of CPI. So we know that next year's CPI for the tax bills would be 2.3%. Because that's already been established, but the following year we would expect no change in CPI, so we have a flat increase in our tax levy. We do know what our new property is for this year, and it's 48.6 million, but this does model a $25 million or a slight drop in new property. We've been experiencing about $50 million in new property every year, but this does reflect in future years a $25 million in new property. This does project a 1 year 90% drop in interest, 1 year flat in state, federal, and stimulus. And we feel that this analysis is spot on with the budget that was adopted by the state of Illinois based upon what was just passed by the legislators this past weekend. So we do believe this is accurate, assuming that the state is able to receive the funding to backfill their current financial deficit. With using this analysis, we'd have just short of $283 million in revenue, expenditures at 281, and leaves a fund balance of about just $2 million. And we'd end up with a ending fund balance of $117 million, or 42% of our fund balance percentage. When we look at what those projections do over time, based upon what was presented, we would still expect to have positive revenues over expenditures, and we would our lowest fund balance percentage would be 40%, and again, well above the threshold for our target of 30%. When we look at then a medium recovery, what does that look like? So that represents 1 year of 0% CPI, multiple years of $25 million in new property, a 2-year drop in interest, and 2 years of flat state and federal stimulus with stimulus dollars there. Because all of these factor in the first year with the same assumptions, all of the impacts to the FY21 budget have no impact, because it really is the future revenue years that will be where we see the change in the impact of the district's overall finances. So on the next slide, we would expect then with those scenarios that we still again would have a 42% or $117 million ending fund balance. In FY22, we would see revenues under our expenditures of $3 million. Our fund balance would drop to $114 million, and we'd be at a 40% fund balance percentage. And when we look at your FY23, we'd be at $289 million in revenues, 294 in expenditures. We'd have a shortfall of $5 million. We'd have an ending fund balance of $109 million, and we'd be at 37%. And certainly negative and red numbers don't look good to us, but we're still well above our fund balance percentage and of 30% at 37%. In the next slide, we have what is a slow recovery. So a slow recovery would represent 2 years of 0% CPI, multiple years of 25 million in new property, and a 2-year drop in interest rate with 2-year flats. That would represent, again, the year FY21 budget's the same, but as we look at the future years in this scenario, we would see that we at FY23 would have a $6.9 million deficit. We'd have $107 million ending fund balance, and we have a 36% fund balance percentage. Again, still above our targeted 30%. But certainly within our thresholds, and certainly, you know, as we look to continue supporting our students despite what's happening with COVID, you know, I think there's still ability for us to evaluate our current expenditures to ensure that, you know, we don't put ourselves in financial harm, but certainly we can withstand any sort of short or long-term impacts from what COVID-19 might be doing to our finances. So in the next slide, this is this year's budget request. And if you look at what's here, much of it's based upon staffing, our staffing ratios that we have in our current contract, or staffing ratios that we have per our federal guidelines for our special education population. And then we focused everything else on student supports. So we are asking for 4 teachers, which we have to provide as part of our staffing contract. And so that would be 4 teachers for that. We're asking for accompaniments for our high school choral programs to support our teachers to provide instruction and support our students in our choral programs. We're asking for 2 blended expansion teachers at our middle school to support the expansion of blended learning into our middle schools. We're looking at ESL teachers of 1.65 to support our English language learners. Secretary support as we continue to see a growing population on the western portion of the district. This is our staffing ratio for our secretarial support, and it's small increments at various buildings, which would equate to less than 1 FTE for secretarial support. In order to support our ESL students at the high school level, we'd like to ask for 3 bilingual paras. Again, due to staffing of our high schools, and to have consistency, we're asking for attendance manager at our Hampshire High School with the growing population that's out there. We have 2 middle schools that currently don't have in-school supervision supervisors. And so we would ask, because of the support and just making sure that we've continuity across all middle schools, that we would ask for 2 in-school supervision supervisors. We would ask for 1 pre-K substitute. We currently have provided 2 substitutes at all of our 3 through 5 elementary schools. And at this point, we're finding that it would benefit our pre-K program to also have a full-time substitute to support them as they have some vacancies and needs for substitute, and to have that continuity on a day-by-day basis. Again, we talked about the special ed teacher enrollment. That's based upon staffing that we need to follow federal guidelines. So we'd ask for 4 teachers there. And again, for staffing purposes, we'd ask for 1 dean to be supported at our school to make sure our ratios for dean to students and deans that are consistent among our, I believe this is middle school, that we would ask for that. So it'd be 20 positions and a $1.3 million increase to our budget. And we'll show you in the next slides how that models out for looking at a slow, a fast, and a medium recovery. So in the next slide, if we look at this is with a quick recovery, with those additions, we could sustain and have a positive fund balance of $682,000 for the current budget year. We would still see a positive fund balance change for FY22, and we would see a negative in FY23, but again, all of those percentages, as we look at it, are all above the 30% threshold. And the next slide for looking at the medium recovery, again, this then just layers on these expenses. So we would expect to see a revenues under expenditures in FY22 and FY23 at 4.4 million and 6.5 million. But again, we're still above our targeted percentages, and certainly could look at our current budget, because we do believe that these requests are really what's needed for our students and to best support our buildings. In the last slide, again, to project out, we would be at revenues over expenditures at 8.3 million in FY23, but again, well above our target percentage of 30%, and would give us time to adjust if for some reason this recovery took on longer, or we were starting to drop below a threshold that we could comfortably absorb in our financial projections. One other thing we wanted to highlight is we are going to receive CARES dollars through the state of Illinois. Those are really supposed to be used for student supports. Really, how are we addressing the various needs for students as the impact of COVID-19 looks at their concerns and how we can best support them to be successful. The dollars are provided to us based upon our Title I funding schools. In this scenario, we would request that we would get 2 ALOP teachers. This is our alternative learning opportunity program for those students that are credit deficient. We provide additional supports. Currently, we run that program at Dundee Crown High School. We would look to expand that program at Hampshire High School and Jacobs High School, and provide 1 teacher to provide assistance to students that are behind their graduation requirements, and provide tutoring and specific schooling to help support them to graduate on time. We would request that in order to support that program, we would have a graduation coach that would work between both schools, 0.6 at Jacobs High School and 0.4 at Hampshire High School. And what that graduation coach would be is to work with the students individually to come up with a plan to make sure that they could get back to grade level and finish up the coursework to let them to be successful to graduate on time. We are also asking to provide teachers on special assignments to provide support to our schools where we don't have assistant principals, but where we have higher needs due to the students, whether it's the demographics of that school or the programs that are being provided. And we would ask to provide to one staff member in each one of those buildings to provide supports to those principals for some of the administrative work that needs to occur to help support them run their building efficiently and support students and families. We would ask for 8 mental health social workers to provide social work on a mental health basis at our elementary schools. So we're asking for 8 of those at our elementary schools. We're asking to expand our Period Dream program, and we would ask to hire 3 registered behavior therapists. We would look to hire 3 mental health counselors to expand our Dream program for our students that are at most risk with adverse childhood experiences. And then the last thing is, as part of CMS and PERI, to provide a shared mental health counselor for those students. And we would ask for one, again, for our children with adverse childhood experiences and help support them as they come back to school and have lost this quarter of learning, to then really dig in and dive in and get these kids back on track. We also would ask for what assistant principal, as we move to CMS for expanding our dual language program, to put an additional principal to support the dual language program that's going to be growing and support the students that would be participating in that program, and really make sure that we've got a sound, robust program with the right supports for that piece. That roughly adds up to a little under $800,000 left. And then what we'd like to do is then, with whatever needs that come up for purposes of how we support moving back to a face-to-face learning environment in a world of COVID-19, whether it be how do we screen students appropriately, how do we have the right protective equipment for our staff and students, and all the various things that we will need to be considering as we transition back to a face-to-face learning environment, but also needing to make sure that we minimize transmission and keep our staff and students safe. We would like to earmark $800,000 of that for various equipment that will bring a proposal forward to purchase to help remove any of those barriers that would not allow us to open as quickly as possible once we're allowed to do so. Our CARES dollars is just short of 2.5 million. And again, this sits outside of it, much just like a grant. It would be dollars that we get in, it would be dollars that we expend out. And then we would reevaluate this for the second year and factor that in for next school year. But at this point in time, that would be how we would promote and choose to use our FY 2021 dollars, and just wanted to make you aware of that portion of our budget.
Susan, I have a question. About the protective equipment. How is it going to be determined what the needs are?
So we're closely watching the CDC guidelines and the Department of Public Health recommendations, and we've been fortunate that that documentation was just released. And then we've been working closely with Mr. Hyde and then our union leadership on what some of those pieces look like. Just as we look to open up June 1st, we've used the guidelines from the CDC on what are the things that we believe are the most effective ways to limit transmission. So all of our decisions related to what equipment we do provide is based upon what's in the guidelines that is shown to be the most effective to help provide a healthy and safe work environment.
Wonderful, thank you.
So as part of tonight's conversation as well too, as I mentioned earlier, we also would like to begin the design work. We've already begun the design work for the new elementary school that was already approved at a previous meeting. And as part of our capital projects budget for 2021, these are the projects that we've outlined. Just as a reminder, all of this information is reviewed with our board finance committee and our construction and facility oversight, both of those board committees. And so this already has been reviewed, but this would allow us to begin the design work for this work and to work with our construction management firm to release bids in November. If we don't start this work right now, we can't stay on that timeline. And if we get authorization and we at least begin the design work for these projects, we're in a position that, should funding feel secure and safe enough of where we're at financially, we could release those bids to begin this work for summer 2021. By slowing down or not beginning this work, it certainly causes implications for us that what we've seen in the past is if we get our bids out in November or December, we've saved millions of dollars by being the first out there with our bids. But this would not commit us to having to spend those dollars. It would just position us to be prepared to release those bids, and we would work through our structures of our construction and facility oversight committee before we release those bids to make sure that we feel that the district's financially sound to move forward with these projects. So we would ask that we would work with Leggett on the Dundee Crown Fieldhouse floor, gym floor. It's well beyond its useful life and time to be repaired. We ask for HMS to replace the asbestos flooring in the older portions of that building and use Leggett to do the design work. We have a failing athletic bridge that's well overdue and is certainly a safety hazard, and certainly a place that vehicles that are of fire and police, if they needed to get out there, we really need that bridge to be functioning, and we would ask to work with Leggett for that. We would like to remove and replace the asbestos flooring at Perry Elementary and use Dewberry to do that project. The Fieldhouse floor at Hampshire High School, while that school is 2008, it has reached its end of useful life. We've had it evaluated by multiple engineers, and we no longer can continue to have it operate the way it is, and it has become a safety hazard. So if we don't replace it, it certainly could be problematic in the future for us should we choose to run indoor track on that floor. So that has risen to the occasion from a safety perspective that it needs to get done now. And then the last thing is part of our, and that work would be done by Leggett for the Fieldhouse floors. And then the last piece, we would like to do our roof repairs. We've been on a cycle to do and replace and repair our roofs based upon an evaluation by Interstate. We would like them to begin that bidding process to complete that work because DC is our next largest roof to be replaced and is on the timeline to do so. So where we are with this, we can get through comfortably the projects for summer 2020. We would have $13.2 million left if we didn't receive EDA funding, but we've already received it. Our ending balance with all the projects and the funding we've received would be at 16.6 million, which would carry forward to the next year. Right now, the proposed projects include half of the new elementary school in summer 2021, half of the new elementary school in 2022. So we do run into a shortfall beginning in 2022 of $13.8 million. So we will have to figure out, if we choose to move forward with all of the projects, a funding source for everything that's been presented. But again, our intention for you tonight, we're not approving the budget. We're just approving the intention to move forward with the design work, and we'll continue to monitor and evaluate our capital projects projections to ensure that we understand our funding source for these projects, to not put the district in any sort of financial harm moving forward, but we're positioned, should we feel comfortable and that these are good decisions for the districts moving forward, that we're able to release these bids and move forward with these projects.
Susan, I have a point of clarification, please, and I should have asked this earlier, and I apologize to you. The property taxes from last year versus the projected for this coming year are $5 million more. Is that based upon the new property and development and construction?
Yeah, that's the biggest portion of it. When we did our analysis for the property tax approval, if I recall correctly, we did have CPI of 1.9% for actually for part of this year. So the biggest portion of the increase in property taxes is because of the $48.6 million in new property. That is correct.
Yep. Thank you.
So our budget timeline, so we did present this budget scenarios at the board finance and the construction and facility oversight committee meetings. So again, this has already been reviewed by most of the board members. Tonight, we are presenting the proposed budget request and presented the capital projects. We are asking you to vote on the proposed budget request so we can go ahead and start advertising for those positions and position ourselves to get those positions filled. And we will ask you to vote on the proposed capital projects design work. But again, we're not voting on the actual projects themselves. That will happen as part of the formal budget process in September, as well as the formal bid releases in November. So again, in July, we'll be back with our finalization of the preliminary financial projections. I will provide updated budget scenarios. In August, we present the tentative budget, which then authorizes us to put our budget on display and put it in the newspaper to let people know that in September, we would present the final budget and have our budget hearing. And that all works in conjunction with the Board Finance and Construction and Facility Oversight Committee throughout all those steps as well, too. And that concludes the budget.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay, so on to a COVID-19 update. I've tried to provide the board and the community an update. I started to touch on several topics related to this, and I'll share more as we proceed. So the COVID count, we have seen some decline over the last 2 weeks. We kind of see these peaks and valleys. However, as a region, our region in particular, which was one that we had some initial concerns about, is currently still all green lighted on the dashboard. And so we expect to move to phase 3 in this week with the rest of the state. And then we'll continue to monitor possibly the transition. As you know, 28 days later is the earliest that can currently occur. So sometime by July 1st, or even after the first week of July, if things continue to move positively, we would hope to see us moving into phase 4, which is obviously the trigger for us, which speaks to the allowance that schools will reopen. And again, this gets back to the fact that we're waiting on ISB to provide some June 1st clarification and guidance for planning. I do not believe that ISB will issue any mandates. I believe they'll provide a great deal of flexibility at the local level to address various topics as it relates to grading, attendance, those types of things, depending on what type of environment we open up in. And again, we are planning for every scenario possible. As we've provided a regular update, and unfortunately, the timeline in which we put together the presentation, we're typically, at least we're about 4 or 5 days behind in the most accurate data. So these numbers reflect data that was provided as of the 9th. So phase 3, we hope to move into, as I shared at the end of May. You can see the numbers here of the number of positive cases by county. We do span 4 different counties. You can see, unfortunately, the mortality rate for COVID here locally. So school supply pickup went very well. The remaining items right now, we have coordinated our efforts with Durham. Communication will go out to those target families, specifically any family who did not sign up or come to pick up their students' belongings. As you know, at the elementary and middle school level, those items were bagged. We've taken the same approach, as my understanding, now at the high school level with any remaining items. We're going to send out RCS messaging to these individual families, and Durham will start delivering items to people's homes. And so, as you know, Durham has been a great partner. So we'll utilize their drivers and their resources to drop those items off. In areas where we have more of a population density, or apartment complexes, which also makes it rather difficult for delivery. When you start talking about stairs and turnaround space, the plan is to have the bus there and notify parents that the bus will be there with students' belongings on a specified date and for a specified period of time. Parents will come, and then we will give them back their students' belongings. Anything that we have or we retain beyond these dates, unfortunately, given the circumstances, we are not able to store them past the date certain. So once we've made an effort to deliver them, anything else remaining, unfortunately, will be disposed of. So it is important that we communicate that. That messaging will begin in earnest later this week, going into next week. Food service, I got to tell you, if you have to have a partner, Aramark has been, an exemplary partner to hold up as a role model for others. Aramark has just done a great job working with Jennifer Porter and her team to coordinate all of our efforts to make sure that our families are getting food in a timely manner, that we continue to expand our locations and our offerings We did make an adjustment for the Memorial Day weekend, but we are back to a regular schedule again. Parents are able to pick up multiple days. Good news, we were authorized to continue with food service and distribution through August 31st. There'll be some modifications to sites, primarily based on construction. So if a site is no longer usable due to heavy construction, equipment, machinery, or even safety reasons, for example, asbestos abatement, we will provide notification to families about what those alternative sites will be. For example, Perry Elementary School distribution will move to Dundee Crown, if I recall correctly. So those will all be messaged as we have been doing. Utilize Anthony McGinn does a very good job communicating this both on our website and through our various social media platforms. But this information will also be shared with parents and families via RCS messaging. But we do want to continue to thank our partners. We've been approached by independent people who would like to make a donation and are looking for creative and innovative ways and strategies to best support this. We obviously want to thank our local food pantries, in particular D300 Food Pantry. Thank you to that group who have done a fantastic job ramping up their initiatives. They're feeding a very large amount of people with a very small crew because they have tried to follow some of the same guidelines from the CDC and the local health department as far as the food distribution process. So they're working with a skeleton crew, and they're actually out there on weekends donating their time and delivering in the rain. I thank you to our high schools for donating the use of their pop-up tents so they could better facilitate those deliveries. But I gotta be honest with you, there are a lot of families right now struggling, more so than we've ever thought previously. So I'm very grateful to continue food service to August 31st. Graduation update. We have provided our communication to families previously that we have backup dates for late June and late July. We continue to move aggressively with our planning. I will bring a formal recommendation to the board at the next board meeting. The board members will actually receive some additional documentation information for your reading and background. I'm really reluctant to share much at this point because there's a lot yet to finalize, but I'm excited at the opportunities that will allow us to host a graduation ceremony that's as close to a normal ceremony as we can possibly do under the current restrictions, even those under phase 3 or even phase 4. So I'm pleased that we found some creative solutions with our partners. But again, I think it ultimately comes to a decision. I want to make sure the board is looped in. Thank you to our building principals for working with us to try and make sure that we can do this in a meaningful manner and try and make the most of the graduation event for our students. As I shared, we're working on a lot of graduation plans. We are working in conjunction with the state based off IDPH guidelines and those released by ISB. I did share those with the board previously when we were given that communication update, in addition to which we're working locally. So again, we touch 4 different counties. And so at many times we find ourselves in a situation where we're following 4 different or very unique mandates, each one specific to a county. The benefit we have as a school district is we are not obligated or constrained under statute to hold graduation in a particular county. So we have a great deal of flexibility to find a partner who will allow us and provide the greatest flexibility possible while also ensuring that we're maintaining a safe environment for our staff, our students, and our family members. We would never put anybody in a position where we would do something in an unsafe manner. So we will maintain all the social distancing guidelines, but I think, again, the board and community will be largely impressed with the time and effort that we put into planning and coordinating an event. It's just a matter now of finalizing the dates and the times. But more information will come in the near future. Registration update. So this again was based off of last week's update. Mr. Emerickson's done a great job in tracking this. We have not done our regular marketing or messaging on this topic. So to give you a little bit of context, Mr. McGinn shared earlier today with the administrative team when we do our weekly meetings and talk through updates from each department. Jason shared the numbers, but Anthony was quick to point out that in the past year, we have been closer to an 80% registration rate, but that's because we have worked with our building principals. They've sent out numerous targeted messages to their communities The district would have sent out multiple messages. To date, because of COVID and the focus on other areas, we've only sent out one message. So starting this week, we are going to start sending out our targeted messages to any family who have not registered their students. And so we are roughly at 54%. Clearly, if you look down the list here of the percentage registered, we have a great amount of flexibility or variation amongst the percentages complete. With us moving to phase 3, giving us a little bit more breathing room as far as our ability to meet with groups of up to 10 individuals at a time while maintaining social distancing and safe procedures in accordance with IDPH guidelines. Our FSLs and others will be able to start working into more one-on-one with our families to help walk them through registration. So we expect over the next few weeks, registration numbers will steadily increase and get back on track with normal registration events. But again, we've held off on targeted communication because our communication previously, we did not want to overwhelm families. As many of you know, we sent out weekly updates about grading, about policies, FAQs related to e-learning. And again, we didn't want anything being lost or to create an additional burden on our families. So at this time, we are going to start ramping up that communication. June 1st return date. So across the district for 12-month employees, we will be transitioning staff back to normal operations. When I say normal operations, our facilities will be open Monday through Friday to support our community members and our students. Fridays will likely be a remote day for most operations because we need a 3-day weekend to provide some additional cleaning and a barrier that should we have an exposure event to the school. As you know, we have always used 72 hours as a minimum amount of time for us to allow COVID to be in the building and then do a deep, thorough cleaning before returning anyone back to the building. So June 1st, we'll start phasing our staff back. That includes central office, all of our school facilities. As you know, our building administrators have already been working. Many of our school secretarial staff and custodians have been working. This is the final phase of transitioning staff back. No one will be working every single day. We have asked and we have put together a very good technical assistance document that addresses and inclusive of an FAQ for staff, addresses the vast majority of questions and concerns that they may have. Everything from why are we returning? Why are we allowed to return? Isn't there a shutdown order or a stay-at-home order? And quite honestly, what most people tend to forget is we're essential workers. We will not have all staff back at one time. So they will be splitting their time. They'll be splitting their teams into 2 or more teams and then rotating both in-person work as well as remote work as we have been doing. And as we transition over the next few months, if the data continues to trend positively and we see a transition to phase 3 at the end right now, and then we see possibly a transition to phase 4 in late June, early July, mid-July, then we will start again phasing more staff back on a regular basis, again with some additional precautions in place, so that we're prepared to return in August. It is also important, I have spoken with our union leadership. We will be communicating with staff to kind of get a sense that, as I shared with you earlier, we're planning for every possible scenario. But we have to plan, the one scenario we have to plan for includes 2 different stakeholder groups that we have to be considerate of their needs and concerns. So let's assume that the state provides us with authorization to return to school with limited or very few restrictions. We will still have some precautions in place. However, I feel as a school district, and we've been planning this for some time in initial discussions, we have to be prepared that we may have staff and or students and families who are immunocompromised, and it may not necessarily be safe or in their best interest to return. So we will probably still have to maintain a presence in e-learning or remote learning for our students starting in August, and we will probably have to address some issues with staff. So we will be surveying staff across all of our employee groups to ask them one simple question. If we open in August, do you expect to return? And if not, please contact Mr. Mora, and here are the options that we can talk with you about. We have no interest whatsoever in being punitive, but I think the board and our community would agree, as have most of the conversations I've had been very professional and very considerate. But we can't also open school and realize that we're missing 50 employees. We have to prepare for that. And so I think it's important for us to start working with our staff to address any concerns or questions that they may have, provide those additional assurances, and then work over time to mediate those issues. But there are lots of options that we have and that we can explore, including for those for our staff. So I look forward to those conversations with our teams, with you, and with our collective bargaining leaders, our union leadership. It's been a great collaborative effort so far, and we expect the same. So we all have the same interest in heart. We want to make sure we serve our students, but we also want to make sure our staff feel protected and feel valued as well. And that's our interest, and we will continue to focus in those areas. I did share quite a few of the enhancements. So this is a good example, this list here provided on this slide, that even if we were to open with no restrictions, here are the steps we've already taken. And Dr. Scarpino asked a question earlier, what guidelines are you following, and how do you know what to do? Well, trust me, the CDC has not held they've made their opinion known, has have local health departments and our governor and others. So screening procedures, questionnaires before people are allowed to enter the building. Many of our high schools use this process before allowing people to enter, even for their student collections. There was a poster that basically said, if you say yes to these questions, please don't enter. For example, do you have a fever? Have you had a fever? Are you sick? Is anybody in your household sick? Has anybody been tested positive for COVID in your household? Those kinds of questions. In addition to that, a secondary process may be put in place. We're exploring various options, to screen people based off their temperature. There is now some mixed data about the value of screening people based off temperatures. We're still planning to look at incorporating that, even if it's just a secondary process or screening measure for us. We are currently exploring every option, from a handheld thermometer, no touch thermometer, that's a medical grade device, to those that we could install as part of our security features that would actually capture group temperatures and identify individuals who may have a temperature that rises above the norm, and then that person would be pulled aside for secondary screening. Please know this is all right now just ideas and things that we're exploring. There's nothing finalized. And that's why I said I want to make sure, before we start asking a lot of questions, well, who's going to screen people? Who's going to be the secondary screener? We're first exploring what our options would be, and we're going to wait some guidance to see if this is actually something that's required, or just something we want to do as an additional precaution. So we are exploring the various vendors. We've had several meetings. Thank you to Jason Emmerson and others who have been coordinating those conversations. Really pleased with the technology that's out there. I will say I have been surprised it's not cheap, but there are things that are out there that we are exploring when it comes to temperature. Obviously, traditional PPE, as Ms. Harkin indicated, we'd like to set aside almost $900,000 from the CARE Act funds for the purchase of things like thermometers, additional PPE for our staff, things like the plexiglass screens that we will have now in all of our entrances for our secretarial staff and clerical staff. Also making sure we're providing those rotating schedules will be another enhancement for our staff. The electrostatic cleaners, really pleased that Dan Opels was able to work with Ms. Harkin and Diane White very quickly. They moved on this before the market got saturated with requests. So we are on schedule to receive an electrostatic cleaning device for each one of our sites, inclusive of, and we are exploring the options for Durham, as I shared previously, like a backpack type device. The benefit of electrostatic is that it charges the particles. The particles that it emits are also very small, so it doesn't essentially soak or saturate a surface. But the fact that they're charged particles, if you think for a moment, for example, if you were to take your dining room table and you were to spray the surface with end dust, you'll only be able to get end dust on the surfaces that are directly exposed to the spray. Whereas with an electrostatic sprayer, the charged particles, as it wraps around the table, it will actually adhere to the bottom of the table as well, without you having to directly spray it. And I'm exaggerating to a certain extent the process, because I'm oversimplifying and not exaggerating it. But it is something that's being utilized in large industrial settings. So we're very pleased to have moved very quickly to procure those. And then obviously we've established procedural guidelines and restrictions and limitations on common spaces. Our staff must wear masks at any time they're in a common space throughout these months, starting in June. They must also adhere to social distancing guidelines for areas like the cafeteria, We have secured wireless headphones, or not, excuse me, not wireless, headphones and microphones for staff so that if they're in a shared space, they can still participate in Zoom meetings without disrupting others, because the devices also have some sound deadening technology as well. So I think the team has done a fabulous job logistically in planning for how we can start to protect and enhance our staff and our security and safety procedures as we get ready to start transitioning people back. Any questions about that?
Nope.
As I shared before, we're working on 4 options for the reopening of school. The only thing I would caution people to understand is within an option, there's any number of possible variations to that model. Again, I will share those in June with the board, staff, students, and families. It'll be shared not only through a board meeting, but also through RCS messaging. I will pre-record and share some taped messages that explain each option to our families and our staff. And then we'll host virtual town hall meetings to gather feedback and answer any questions that people may have, make sure we've addressed and satisfied their interests and or concerns. And some of those will be target specific, meaning school level specific, and some will be student demographic specific. For example, our EL learners, our special education learners, what specific questions they may have about each one of those. And so we'll be doing that throughout the summer as well as part of our planning process. And then lastly, as I shared, we are finalizing, I know we've worked very collaboratively with LEAD on the staff survey about e-learning to make sure we gather some good feedback, something that's actionable. I think we all understand that there'll be some frustrations shared as far as individual people's experiences. But again, at this core, we need to identify, is there a consistent issue that we can address? And if so, what is it and how do we best address that? So we'll be sharing that information with the board in the very near future as well. I just, again, want to say thank you to everyone involved. This has been an incredible undertaking, reconstituting an entire school district, reconstituting what teaching and learning looks like, literally 24 hours after a closure. I cannot thank our union leadership enough. I cannot thank our staff enough. And we have consistently tried to provide positive messaging to everyone, because I don't think people realize just what it took. Everything from food service, which is typically done during a normal day in a cafeteria setting, to making sure everybody gets paid the right way, to making sure benefits are done, issuing refunds for students who purchase things or prepaid for items like prom, to having to coordinate how to cancel large scale trips, as many of you know, Washington, D.C. trips and other things, finalizing the end of the year, trying to work within ISB guidelines to address grading policies and provide the most fair and equitable system possible, making sure that we're protecting our staff. I mean, the amount of work that our teams put into this, it's just immeasurable, and I cannot thank them enough. Again, all the positive messages, teachers holding parades, family members scheduling parades. And I want families to understand they're part of when I refer to the District 300 team, they very clearly are a very strong, important part of this, because without them, e-learning would not have happened. As frustrating as it can be to overnight become a child's substitute teacher or teaching aide, or even in some cases, parents felt like they were full-time teaching. I think the board would agree that when you look at the social media and the acknowledgments that many of our families shared about thank you teachers, and a lot of the jokes and memes that we've shared previously, it's a strong testament that people respect and value our field. And this is an opportunity for us to revisit what teaching and learning looks like. So again, one more time, sincerely from me, I know the board joins me in this and saying thank you to everyone who made this happen. And again, there is no role that's any more important or any less important than another. We would not have been successful without any single person or any single department contributing their full effort to making this happen. So again, from everyone from IT to custodian, busing to food service to, oh my goodness, all the clerical staff to issuing POs, making sure procurement's happening, getting cleaning materials, doing trainings. It has been an undertaking. And I will also say thank you one more time to the D300 Seamstress Group. We sent out another email today recognizing, acknowledging that we will bring them before the board in the near future. I think they deserve that. Who stitched and sewed, if I remember correctly, the number previously was over 600 masks. If I maybe, I don't know if anybody wants to chime in and say whether or not.
That's correct. That is correct, Mr. Haag.
So, we had people who took it upon themselves. We provided the materials. In many instances, they donated their own materials to sew masks when they knew that PPE was virtually impossible to secure because it had all been earmarked for first responders, emergency personnel, rightfully so. But our own team stepped up, and I cannot, again, there's example after example after example of where our people stepped up to go above and beyond. And sincerely, it meant the world. It's just a tough situation for a lot of people. And it means the world to know that you have a team who's going to come together no matter what and make things work for kids and for each other. So very, very impressed and very pleased at the efforts that we've put in so far. So, and legislative updates. At this time, the only thing we're kind of waiting on, there are some revisions that we anticipate coming out of this session. In particular, as you know, the senior credits were waived, a half a year credits were waived for graduation. We know that ISB has to explore and address that same issue for freshmen through juniors. Unfortunately, previously, they did not have legislative permission to do so or authority to do so. They will be exploring that. And then there's a great deal of other information that will be coming out of legislative session as it pertains to student testing and assessment. Are we going to give IAR this year? We know that SAT will be done in the fall. We're waiting on additional guidelines and information on that. So there's still a lot that will happen this legislative session that will help provide us direction and clarification as we plan and prepare for school in August. So right now, that is it for legislative update.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. And I believe we had one submission by a community member for
We
public
did.
participation.
We did. And as we did last time, I'll go ahead and read that. This email has
you.
this public participation submissions already been forwarded to the board. So you have this as well. So this is public comments from Mr. Mike Tennis, 303 Churchill Court, Sleepy Hollow 60118. Is specific to agenda item 12.1, the draft budget, and the 12.4 summer 2021 capital projects. Administration seeks a vote on proposed budget requests. As a district taxpayer, consider the following thoughts. The quick recovery is unlikely. Federal Reserve Chairman Powell indicated May 17th on 60 Minutes that the specter of a prolonged recession and weak recovery if the federal government does not use all of its power to support businesses and workers. B, a revenue assumption of no change in the CPI is inconsistent with history. In the Great Recession, according to the Illinois Department of Revenue, CPI dropped from 4.08% in 2007 to 0.1% in 2008. Slow recovery possible, yet unlikely. A revenue assumption of 0% CPI for 2 years is also inconsistent with history. Following a CPI of 0.1% in 2008, CPI grew to 2.7% in 2009 and 1.5% in 2010. A revenue assumption of a 2-year drop in interest rates is likely based on the historical annual yield of a 10-year treasuries that dropped from 4.63% in 2007 and continued to fall for 5 years to 1.8% in 2012. The medium recovery is likely. A revenue assumption of 0% for 1 year is likely based on the previous and historical experience from 2008 through 2010, previously discussed. Also, as previously discussed, a revenue assumption of a 2-year drop in interest rates is also very likely. Congress's unprecedented $3 trillion bailout will take time to stimulate the economy, but should provide the foundation for a medium-term recovery within 2 years, like the country's Great Recession recovery between October 2007 and 2009. Administration seeks a vote on proposed capital projects design work. As a district taxpayer, please consider the following thoughts. An FY20 through 24 capital projects projection demonstrates a dependence on annual EDA proceeds of $3.5 million. The summer 2021 proposed projects exceeds $22.5 million, yet an average of $13.4 million over the next 3 years. Summer 2021 capital projects design work proposes design work proceed with 6 projects, including a Hampshire High School field house floor that allegedly has reached the end of its useful life that began only 12 years ago in 2008. Given the current economic conditions likely to persist through the summer of 2021, design work and construction project planning for 2021, such as Hampshire's Fieldhouse floor replacement, should be scaled back and deferred for a year or two. Thank you for thoughtfully considering this. As done previously, Ms. Harkin, I will provide the copy of this to her and ask her to address and or respond to any of the comments, and she will provide a copy for the board as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you for reading that. We'll move to now consent items under $25,000, agenda item 11. Before I read that and ask for a motion, what I'd like to do is just tell the board or share with the board that we asked if you need any clarification. You know, we did not have our normal workshop 2 weeks ago. So with that, I assume we all read the materials and the consent and the roll call, but I just wanted to see if you need any clarification from Mr. Hyder's staff, especially on the consent items. Okay,
No.
Having seen none and heard none, I'd ask for a motion and a second for item 11.
I motion for item 11.
Second.
Lamarca?
Scarpino?
Yeah, Lamarca,
Yes.
McNicholas,
Aye.
Scarpino, aye. Zettler? She mentions aye. Fiorentino?
Aye,
Motion passes 5-0.
thank you. We're now at agenda item 12, which is roll call. Again, what I'll do is I'll read each of the items and I'll pause prior to taking the vote. First is 12.1, which is the approval of 2021 educational plan requests. Okay, I have a
I
motion.
motion, yes.
Second,
I'll second. Okay.
okay,
Lamarca,
Yes.
Scarpino, aye. Zettler? Nancy says aye. McNicholas,
Aye.
Fiorentino?
aye,
Motion passes 5-0.
thank you. Item 12.2, approval of the remote learning software contract.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Scarpino, aye. Lamarca,
Aye.
Fiorentino,
Aye,
McNicholas,
Aye.
Zettler? Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
thank you. 12.3, approval of transportation services contract addendum.
Motion.
I'll second
I'll
that.
second. A second. Lamarca,
Aye.
Scarpino, aye. Zettler? Aye. Fiorentino,
Aye,
McNicholas,
Aye.
motion passes 5-0.
thank you. 12.4 is approval of summer 2021 capital projects.
So moved.
Second.
McNicholas,
Aye.
Lamarca,
Aye.
Fiorentino,
Aye,
Zettler? Aye. Scarpino, aye. Motion passes 5-0.
thank you. 12.5 is approval of the CTE pathway program curriculums.
I motion.
Do we have a second?
We have
I'll
a second.
second
Zettler. Ms. Zettler is a second.
Zettler, second. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Lamarca,
Aye.
Zettler?
She's
Aye.
aye.
Scarpino, aye. McNicholas,
Aye.
Fiorentino,
Aye,
motion passes 5-0.
thank you. And then finally, 12.6, which is the approval of professional development and evaluation software contract, which is a renewal.
So moved.
Second,
Okay. McNicholas,
Aye.
Lamarca,
aye.
Zettler, aye. Fiorentino,
Aye.
Scarpino, aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move into board discussion, including committee reports. Board committee reports, Finance Committee.
I don't have an update for that at all. I know Joe's not here either, but I think we're good there.
Okay, and we heard quite a bit of that. What we heard in the committee meeting, we also heard that during Mrs. Harkin's presentation, correct?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. How about the CFOC, or Construction and Facility Oversight?
Same thing. Susan gave a good presentation, and everything was fully explained and minutes went to the board.
Okay, thank you. Any report for the Utilization Capacity Committee?
We did have a meeting, and right now we are starting to look at some sites for a possible school. And I really appreciate Jason Emmerichson's effort as far as gathering all the data and everything. So we're on top of it. Leslie was also there. I don't know, Leslie, if you have any other comments on it.
No, I agree with you. I think that Jason and the team, rest of the team are really on top of things. They're definitely putting that software that we purchased to great, well, it's not really just software, it's consultation too, but I think they're putting that to great use. So it's really providing some valuable insights.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, for board discussion, 13.2, I'll open it up, but I guess I would like to start by talking about or suggesting that we have a brief discussion about upcoming board meetings. We don't have to make a decision here, but I'd like to hear what Mr. Hyde is thinking. We have 2 board meetings in June 9th and the 23rd. We should be in a different phase for COVID restrictions. So Mr. Hyde, do you want to make some comments, and any board member can make comments about that as well?
Certainly. So obviously the initial transition to virtual meetings happened because of the restrictions to meeting sizes and safety precautions, right? We made a conscious decision. We followed through. We've done this the right way. I think though, if we start to look at the possibility of staff returning June 1st, if our region does indeed move to phase 3, there is nothing that would prevent us from having a board meeting face-to-face. Board members, I will seek some additional clarification. It could be that we follow a similar procedure as we are doing for staff, that maybe half the board is present and half the board joins virtually, and then we flip-flop participation that way. The board may just choose to let each individual board member make a decision on their own for June. But I do think that there's an opportunity in June. We can structure the boardroom, as you know, and provide more than adequate space. We would obviously continue to provide this hosting platform so we can support public participation because we are limited to 10 individuals. So when you think about having the whole board there, plus our attorney, plus myself, and then key staff such as Ms. McMahon or Ms. Vicente, excuse me, or Ms. Harkin, we've exceeded our 10, plus our district safety officer and law enforcement officer. So we would have to do some type of structured or staggering. Now, it could be also the limitation of gathering of 10 would be in that specific area. So it could be actually that some of my staff are in conference room A right across the hall, and the board meeting can be conducted in the general board meeting. But again, we would provide this platform for our stakeholders to continue to be engaged. I think it's something worth sharing with you, giving you some time to reflect on your thoughts and opinions. And then if I'll address some additional questions for you in writing. and outline what the procedures would be. Some of you may have cautious or precautionary concerns. I know some of you have had family members who have recently undergone medical procedures. You may have some concerns, very legitimate concerns as far as your participation currently. So we'll work through all that like we do anybody else. So it's not an all or none. And we've received no direction that it has to be an all or none. So very pleased to share that we continue to have flexibility. Just want to put that out there. I know some of you have asked me about attending in person. And so I want to tell you that that opportunity will be provided to you if you choose to do that in the near future. But I think it's worth further discussion with the board.
Okay. Do we have to make an announcement prior to 6/9? As to that, we still have flexibility in that regard, right?
No, because you're still hosting the meeting and everything is being published in accordance with the requirements. So your physical presence is irrelevant at that point, unless there's a change to OMA or revision back.
Right.
And I would not anticipate that happening until at least phase 4.
Okay, good. Well, we'll look forward to hearing more on that. And if you have any, comments or concerns, feel free to share them with us and Mr. Hyde. Any other comments on that, board members?
I would like to see us go back if June 1st, and hopefully everything works out, June 1st, the administrators are back. I would love for us to be back also.
Yeah.
As board.
I would agree with that. I think that would, and show our community that we're in line with everything else and that
Yeah.
we're doing the public's service. And if there's anybody uncomfortable with it, we do have that flexibility, Mr.
Correct.
Hyde said. So I think that, we'll hear from more board members, but I would personally would like to see us get back to some form of normalcy and representing our community. Although I will say that you've done a great job, to you and your staff. Doing these virtual meetings has gone very well, in my opinion.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
We've certainly tried. By the time we all get to be experts at this, we won't have to do it anymore.
Right. I would like to make just an overall comment. Mr. Hyde, you did a great job thanking so many people, and you're spot on. And I would just like to offer my personal thanks to you for all that you've done. I know we're not through it all yet, but I've been on now 6 conference calls at the state level with board members, and not every district has been run as smoothly as ours. And so, and I recognize that because I hear from other board members and they describe some of the challenges. We've had challenges, but through your leadership and your team and your staff, you've done a phenomenal job. And I just want to say thank you as you're thanking everybody else for what you've done.
Thank you.
Any other comments under discussion? Okay, having heard none, I would say the meeting is adjourned. I ask everybody to stay safe and take care of one another. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Good
Thank
seeing
you.
everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.